So I am recording. Feel free to stop me though. I could always pause it and then go back. So don't worry about interrupting. Please interrupt me if you have any questions. Today we're going to really focus in on section 8.7. So we're going to be doing notes 8.7. And what are those notes? It's really factoring standard form quadratic trinomials. Today on 8.7, when your a value is not 1. So let's first review a bit. What is a standard form quadratic trinomial? It's in order from highest exponent down to smallest. First and last name quadratic because the degree is 2. Trinomial because there's 3 terms. And we should all understand that A, B, and C are just numbers. So a number here, a number there, and a number there. Okay, so we understand that. We also understand that factoring one of these quadratic trinomials, when your a value is 1, that means that there's no number in the front. That's like one of the easiest things to do. We did this yesterday. It's as simple as writing out your factored format, parenthesis, XX. Now, why is that? Why could we do this? Because there is no number in the front. X times X is X squared. Now, if you had a 5 out here, a 6 out here, an 8 out here, then you wouldn't be able to set this up. Like if there were 8 right there, you wouldn't be able to set this up because X times X is not 8X squared. You might have a 4X and a 2X, or a 2X and a 4X, or an 8X and a 1X. So things change when you have an a value of 1. But what we've done so far, the easiest part of factoring a quadratic trinomials is when your a value is not, or when your a value is 1. That way you could simply think, what times what is your c value, negative 12, that if you combine together is your b value, negative 4. So I always say make a list. How could you get negative 12? 1 times negative 12. Or how about 2 times negative 6, or 3 times negative 4? And that's about it. Those are all the possible ways of multiplying 2 numbers together to give you negative 12. So the question now becomes, which pair of numbers, when you combine them, gives you that middle value, negative 4? So if you did go 1 plus negative 12, that's negative 11. That's not a negative 11. If you combine 2 plus negative 6, that's negative 4. That is a negative 4. So this is the correct pair of numbers. The other pairs don't work. Again, it's what times what is a c value that if you add together is a b value. So 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. And if you add them together, 2 plus negative 6, it does give you the middle value, negative 4. So this is the pair of numbers that we want. And you simply plug in those values into the blank spots of your parentheses, and you are done. Make sense? That we did that all day yesterday. I hope we are really good at that, thinking what times what is c that if you combine together is b. And I always say make a list of your multiples. So there's also, let's go back to the very first type of factoring that we learned. The very first type of factoring was GCF. So I guess you don't have to copy this down, but there is a GCF that we could pull out. You could pull out a 2, right? And what would be left on the inside if you do pull out a 2? X squared minus 4x minus 12. Now, whenever you factor, always try to pull out the GCF and then always try to continue working on the inside. So I put that in blue so you could see that there's a quadratic trinomial in here, and now it doesn't have a number in the front. Yeah, there's a GCF that we pulled out, but the 2 is no longer directly in front of the x squared. The 2 is now on the outside of the parentheses. So again, if I focus in on the inside only, and I just see that blue quadratic trinomial that no longer has a 2 in front of it, now I could factor thinking what times what is the c value, negative 12, that if I combine together is a b value, negative 4. And we just did that right now. That would be, again, if you make your list, 1 times negative 12, 2 times negative 6, 3 times negative 4. And when you combine the 2 and the negative 6, that does give you the negative 4 right here that's in the middle. So you'd have a positive 2 and a negative 6. The only difference is you did pull out the GCF of 2 right at the beginning. So this 2 needs to come down and be in front of your factored form answer. So this would be your completely factored form answer. 2 on the outside, then the binomial x plus 2, then the binomial x minus 6. Yay? Yay. Okay, now, these are awesome because the a value is 1. What if you actually had a number out here? Well, dang. If we have a number out there, we're going to have to apply all these steps. All right, so this is the long method, but we already know this long method because I taught you the long method even before the shortcut. You guys remember the long method? Step 1 was to multiply a times c. Step 2 is to make a list of the multiples of this number that combine together to give you the middle value b. And then once you find that pair of numbers, you convert your trinomial to a 4-term polynomial. Let me actually review that. And right here, you actually have to apply that long method. You cannot do this, all right? You cannot say x and x. Why not? Because this is not an x squared. This is a 4x squared. So because of this 4 being out here, I cannot do this. X times x is not 4x squared. It must be a 2 times 2, a 2x times 2x, or maybe a 4x times 1x, or maybe a negative 2x times a negative 2x. But the bottom line is we have to use a different method. You cannot set this up. So I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to do the long method that we originally learned. The long method was step 1 to multiply a times c, which is 4 times the c value, negative 3. So 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. That's the answer for step 1. Are you with me? Okay, we've done this before. The only difference was before we had a 1 out here.
So did you get rid of the 4?
No, I didn't get rid of the 4. I actually just multiplied a times c and I got negative 12, right?
So you keep the 4?
Yeah, you keep the 4 out there in the front. Okay, so now step 2 was to make a list of the multiples of that answer, in this case, negative 12. So how could I get negative 12? 1 times negative 12, 2 times negative 6, 3 times negative 4, and that's it, right? Now, what was the third step? The third step was to, well, first of all, we still need to see which pair of numbers combines together to give us the b value.
2 times negative 6.
Yeah, if I add negative 12 and 1, that's negative 11. That's not negative 11, that's a positive 4. The negative 6 and the 2, when I add those together, it gives me negative 4, and I want it to be a positive 4. So I have the right number, just the wrong sign.
So negative 2 times 6.
So I have the right numbers, just the wrong sign. So change that to a negative 2 and a positive 6. That's right. Okay, now step 3 is where it got nasty, right? What do I mean by that? Step 3 is where you rewrite your trinomial. There's 3 terms up here. You rewrite this trinomial, but instead of this single middle term 4x, you're going to replace it with these guys. So we're going to go 4x squared, and then minus 2x, and then plus 6x, and then the minus 3 at the very end. Again, 4x squared is right there. This middle term became these 2 terms, and that makes total sense because negative 2x plus 6x is 4x, right? And then we bring that down. And the reason why we wanted to change the 3 terms to 4 terms is to factor by grouping. So let me actually factor by grouping. 4x squared minus 2x, big space, plus 6x minus 3. In the first group, what's our GCF? What could we pull out?
2x.
A 2 and an x. What's left over on the inside?
2x minus 2.
2x minus 1, right? If you think 2x times what gets us back to 4x squared? 2x times 2x gives us 4x squared. 2x times negative 1 gets us back to negative 2x. And what could I pull out of the second group over here? Positive 3, right? And when I do pull out 3 times what gets us back to 6x? 2x
Negative 1.
and minus 1. So yes, we do see that there's a common binomial right here that we're going to pull out of the whole thing. So I'm going to write my exaggerated parentheses. I want to put that common binomial of 2x minus 1. I actually take these guys, pull it out so it's no longer there. What's left over? Just the 2x and just the 3. So we just have the 2x and the positive 3. So this is the correct factored form, 2x minus 1 times 2x plus 3. And that's a lot of work, right? It was a lot of work the first time I showed you it. It's still a lot of work now. The first time I showed you this, I gave you a shortcut. And today, I'm also going to give you a shortcut. All right? So if you're like, man, that factoring by grouping, that really, I'm not good with that. Okay.
But that one, this one's also better to know because you show all your work.
But I know what you're saying, but check this out. Check this out. There's this new method. And step 1 and step 2 are the same exact things, all right? Step 1, a times c. Step 2, make a list. Think of the multiples of that pair of numbers that combine together to give you b, right? And the only difference is step 3, you don't do factoring by grouping. It's a lot more awesome. You're going to love it. Check it out. Same problem, all right? Same problem.
Do we write this one down?
Yeah, write this down. And step 1 is to multiply a times c. So what do I get? I get negative 12, right? A times c is negative 12, okay? Step 2, make a list. 1 times negative 12, 2 times negative 6, 3 times negative 4, right? Okay, now step 3, this is where well, first of all, step 2, I keep messing up with step 2. Out of these pair of numbers, which ones combines together to give us the middle value 4?
-2 and a positive 6.
Yeah, these pair of numbers, but change the signs. That way it will combine together to give you a positive 4x. Now, here's the shift. Here's the change. You are not going to change it to 4 terms. You're going to jump right in to the answer format.
So you have 2x squared?
However, look at the notes over here. It says plug in that pair of numbers from step 2 into the answer format, parentheses, ax, ax. What the heck is A? A is the number that's out in the front, all right? And x is just x. So this answer format is going to be 4x and 4x.
Oh.
Why? Because the A value is 4. Now, we know that this is wrong right now because we know that 4x times 4x is 16x squared, not 4x squared. But don't worry about that right now. There's just a shortcut, right? Now, what do we put in these blank spots? These numbers right in there. Yep, so let's put the -2 right in there and the +6 right in there, okay? Now, this is the answer format, but the answer's wrong because just by starting out, 4x times 4x is 16x squared, not 4x squared. So this is wrong. But there's a fourth step, which I call the fourth magical step. And what is that fourth magical step? It says reduce each binomial. It's not even a fraction. You can't really reduce it. But what we're doing is we're looking at the binomial and just dividing by whatever we possibly can, if you can. So check it out. Right here, if I look at the first binomial, you have a 4 and a 2. You could divide both by what?
2.
By 2. So if I divided this binomial by 2, what would I get?
2x minus 1.
2x minus 1. Okay. And how about the second binomial? What could I divide that by?
2.
By 2 also. And what do I get?
2x minus 3.
2x plus 3. And we're done. Isn't that amazing? It's way faster than changing your 3 terms into 4 terms to factor by grouping. Right here, you just plug in parentheses,
So you divide by 2?
ax, plug in your values from step 2, and then reduce by whatever you can. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to reduce all the time or divide all the time. Like if this would have been a 1, a 4x minus 1, then I would have just left it 4x minus 1.
So you do each one individually?
Yeah, in this case, we were able to divide both by 2. But if this one would have been an 8, I would have been able to divide this one by 4, right? And then you'd get, yeah. So anyways, that's the very first time you see this new shortcut method. I think you'll appreciate it. Let me give you this worksheet. So on the back side of your worksheet, you have a copy of these notes, all right? On the back side of the worksheet, I just passed it out. You have these exact notes right here. The shortcut to factoring standard form quadratic trinomials when your A value is not 1. So you actually have a 4 out here or a 6 or a 9. You know, you have some number out here. It's really easy when there's no number. You just think, what times would I see that if you add together is B, if the A value is 1. But if you actually have a number out here, you got to use either the long method, step 1 multiplying A times C, step 2 making a list of the multiples of that answer that combine together to give you B. And then you could change your 3 terms to 4 terms to factor by grouping, or you could use this new shortcut method of setting up your factored form answer format with AX and AX, and then plugging in the pair of numbers from step 2 right here, and then magically reducing to get to your final answer. So once again, let's see these steps in action. So down here we have our example. I hope everybody follows along right now on that back side of the worksheet where these notes are at. Step 1 is to do what?
To multiply A times C.
Multiply A times C. A times C, in this case, is 6 times 6, which is?
36.
36. Okay, there is our answer for step 1. Step 2, what do I do?
You think of multiples that have of the answer that combine to give you B.
Make a list of the multiples of that answer, 36, that combine together to give you B. But let's just make a list of the multiples of 36. That is going to begin with 1 times 36, or 2, or 3. Like, that's what I'm doing. I'm counting. 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12. And if you are not good with multiplication tables, you could think 36 divided by 3 on the calculator, and it'll give you 12, right? Or 36 divided by 4 on the calculator, and it'll give you 9. and so on and so on. 5 doesn't work. 6 times 6 is 36. Those are all the possible combos of multiplying numbers together to give you 36. Question is, which of these, if you add them, gives you the middle value, negative 13? So this is 37. If you add 1 plus 36 is 37. This is 20 when you add them. That's not 20. This is 15 when you add them. That's not 15. This is 13 when you add them. That's 13, but it's negative. So I have the right numbers right here, just the wrong signs. So you're going to change the positive 4 to a negative 4 and the positive 9 to a negative 9. That is the answer for step 2, those pair of numbers. Now, step 3, the original method was to change your trinomial to a 4-term polynomial so you could separate them into 2 groups and factor by grouping. However, we're going to use this new shortcut method, which is jumping right into our factored form answer format, where you have a ax right here and an ax right there. And then you take your numbers from step 2 and put it as a second term of your binomial, as a second term of your binomial. So what is ax that belongs here and here?
6x.
Yep, a is 6 and x is x, of course. So 6x there, 6x there. Now, what about those blank spots right here? We need numbers. Where do we get those numbers from? Negative 4, negative 9 go right in there. That's right. So we have a negative 4 and a negative 9. And that's almost our answer. We just need to reduce each binomial, divide each binomial by whatever you possibly can. And if you can't, you just rewrite it as your answer. But right here on the first binomial, the 6 and the 4, they could both be divided by 2. So what is our answer going to be on that binomial?
3x minus 2.
3x minus 2. It's as simple as 6x divided by 2 is 3x. 4 divided by 2 is 2 with the minus sign. How about over here? What could I divide that second binomial by? Could I divide it by 2? No, by 3, right? So what do I get when I say 6x divided by 3? 2x. And how about 9 divided by 3? Negative 3, right? Okay, so there's our answer. It's really not that bad. Now, I'll tell you this. This is the most challenging part of factoring quadratic trinomials in Algebra 1. This method is fast. It's not that bad, but the only way you're going to get good at it is practicing it, right? So we have to practice. Let's flip this paper over. And we have our homework assignment right here, our practice right here. Of course, the answers are on Google Classroom. So the first 14 questions are all about factoring, and all of them have an a value that's not 1. So if the a value was 1, if there was no number out here, you could jump right in and go parenthesis, x, what times what is this one? That if I combine together is that one, boom, I'm done. But because there's an a value here, I need to go through that longer process. Step 1 would be to multiply a times c. In this case, a is 2, c is 2, so you get a 4 right there. Step 2 is to make a list of the multiples of 4. That would be 1 times 4 or 2 times 2, and that's it. Those are only 2 combos right there. Which of those combos, if I were to add them together, gives me 5?
1 and 4.
1 and 4. So that's the right pair of numbers we want. Step 3 is to you could change the trinomial to a polynomial by replacing the 5x with a 1x plus 4x so you can factor by grouping. But that's a waste of time if you already know the shortcut method. What are we actually going to do? We're going to jump right into the factored form answer format, ax. So what is the first term that goes here and here? 2x, because a is 2 and obviously x is x. So 2x and 2x. And how about this blank spot and this blank spot? What do we put here? The 1 and 4, right? The answer's from step 2. So positive 1, positive 4. Okay, now for the final 4th magical step of dividing or reducing or whatever you want to call it. What could you divide that first binomial by?
1.
By 1. Okay, in other words, by nothing. So just leave it the same. 2x plus 1. And that second binomial, what could you divide by?
2.
By 2. And that'll become 2x divided by 2 is just a single x. 4 divided by 2 is a 2 with the plus sign. Now, like always, if at any moment you're like, man, I probably messed up. I probably did this wrong. You could actually distribute, just to double check, 2 times x, that's 2x squared. 2 times 2, that's 4 with an x. 1 times x, that's another x. And 1 times 2 is another 2. When you combine the 4x and the 1x, that is a 5x in the middle with the 2 as a c value with the 2x squared as a first term. And that is what we originally started with, 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. So you could always distribute to double check your answer. But this is the correct factored form. Do we get it?
100%.
We got to practice this, right? Step 1, A times C. Step 2, make a list of the multiples of that answer that combine together to give you B. And then from there, you set up your answer format, AX, plug in that pair of numbers from step 2, and then divide each of those binomials by whatever you can. Which one would you like to see? Let's do 10. By the way, you should always try to pull out a GCF first. And of course, on this one, you can't, right? There's a 4, a 15, and a 4. You can't pull out a GCF. So we're going to jump right in to A times C, which A is 4, C is negative 4. So A times C, that's 4 times negative 4, giving us negative 16. Step 2, make a list of the multiples of negative 16. 1 times negative 16, 2 times negative 8. 3 times doesn't work, 4 times negative 4, and that's it. Those are all the possible ways of multiplying numbers together to give you negative 16. Which pair of numbers, when I add them, gives me a positive 15? Well, 4 and negative 4 gives me 0 when I add them. 2 and negative 8, when I combine them, 2 plus negative 8, that's negative 6. That's not a negative 6. Negative 16 plus 1, I owe 16, I have 1, I'm going to owe 15. So that gives me a negative 15. That is a 15, but I want it to be positive. That means I have the right numbers, just the wrong signs. So go ahead and circle those, change the sign, and that's the correct pair of numbers for step 2. Now for step 3, we could change the trinomial to a 4-term polynomial, but I'd rather just jump right into my factored form answer format with AX as my first term on each binomial. AX. Oh, wait a minute. These aren't X's, these are B's. So AB and AB on the beginning part of each binomial. So what is the A value? 4 with the B, 4 with the B. Now what do I do with the blank spots? I get the numbers from step 2 and plug them right in. So that will be a -1 and a +16. Final step will be to divide each binomial by whatever you can. That first binomial, you can't divide by anything, so just bring it down, 4b minus 1. That second binomial, you could divide by what?
4.
By 4, right? If you say 2, that's fine, but you want the greatest common factor. So you could pull out a 4. You could divide everything by 4. So when I think 4b divided by 4, that'll give me a single b. And when I think 16 divided by 4, that'll give me a positive 4. And there is my factored form answer. If you wanted to, you could distribute, combine like terms. You will end up with the original quadratic trinomial 4b squared plus 15b minus 4. Now, the second half of the worksheet, as you could see, have equal signs. They have equal signs. They are equations that you need to solve, right? And in order to solve these equations, I mean, you first might think, I want to get x by itself, but the problem is you have x's on both sides, or not both sides, but you have two different types of x's. You have an x squared and you have an x. So you can't get x by itself because there's two different types of x's. Now, because you have equal 0, and because we know zero product property, if you could factor this, which you might be able to do, all you got to do is do the process that we did. If you're able to factor it, then you could split them and set them each equal to 0 and solve. So using that process, A times C, that's 2 times 3, that'll give us 6. Step 2, think of the multiples of 6, 1 times 6 or 2 times 3. And which of those pair of numbers combines together to give us the middle value B, which is 7, 1 and 6. So that's the right pair of numbers we want. Step 3 is to write your factored form answer format, binomial times binomial, AX and AX, in this case 2x and 2x. Why is it 2x? Because there's a 2 right here. That's an A value, AX and AX. Okay, and what do we do with the blank spots? You put that pair of numbers from step 2 right in there. So you're going to put a +1 and a +6. And for your final step on factoring, you magically divide by whatever you can. This first binomial, you can't divide by anything, so you're just going to rewrite it, 2x plus 1. The second binomial, you could reduce both of those or divide both of those by 2. So if you say 2x divided by 2, that'll be an x, and 6 divided by 2, that'll be a 3. So we're going to end up with an x plus 3 right there. And we still have this equals 0, so it's still equal to 0, right? All we did was change this quadratic trinomial to this factored form, which is now a binomial times a binomial, giving you 0. Now, when we do have something times something equaling 0, we could apply the zero product property that says something times something equals 0, the first something, 2x plus 1, that could be set equal to 0. And the second something, x plus 3, that could also be set equal to 0. And you actually get two answers from here. So what are your two answers going to be? You're going to subtract 1, subtract 1. You're going to end up with 2x equaling -1. Final step, divide by 2, cancels out. X equals -1/2. That's one answer. The other answer would be to subtract 3, and you will get the answer x equals -3. So you have those two answers for this one equation. Okay? So that's what we're doing on this worksheet. I hope this long lesson helps you understand this. And you only do this when you have the a value other than 1. So let's keep working on this. Check your answers on Google Classroom, and also ask me for help if you need it. Okay, so let's continue and solve number 7 here. Step 1 is to multiply a times c, which is 2 times -1. That is -2. Step 2 is to make a list of the multiples of -2. How could you get -2? 1 times -2, and that's it, right? That's the only combo besides changing signs, right? So which pair of numbers, that's the only pair you have, if you combine together, gives you the middle value b, which happens to be +1. It's invisible, right? So if I were to add these numbers together, -2 plus 1 is -1, but that's a +1. So I have the right number, just the wrong sign. So I have the right numbers, just the wrong signs. So please change that to a -1 and a +2. Then you could jump right into your factored form answer format, ax, and then the number from step 2 and the number from step 2. However, it's not ax in this case. We have y's, not x's. So ay in this case would be 2y. Okay, 2y. And the pair of numbers is those pair of numbers from step 2, -1 and then +2. Again, the -1's right there, the 2's right there. And then from there, you divide by whatever you possibly can. That first binomial you can't really do anything with, so just bring it down. The second binomial, you could divide both by 2 and you'll get a y plus 1. And that is your factored form for number 7.
Yeah, this is easy, Mr. Salgado.
It gets easy once you practice it, right? So keep in mind that down here, you have to factor first, or maybe, like, check that one out. Dang, that one's ugly. Let's do that one. Looks fun. First of all, this is an equation, and if it does say solve, and if I had only one type of d, all I'd have to do is get d by itself on one side. But I have two different types of d's. I have d squares and d, so I will not be able to get d by itself on one side. So the next thing to think of is to move everything to one side. So I'm going to subtract 10d, and my new equation will be 6d squared plus 11d equals 35. And then I'm going to subtract 35 and subtract 35 to get it equal to 0. 6d squared plus 11d minus 35 equals 0. And then from there, I need to factor this so I could split it and solve. But the problem is we have a number out here in the front, so that makes it a lot more challenging. We have to move to our steps. Step 1, multiply a times c, and that will give us, so a times c is -210. Okay, then we have to think of the multiples of -210 that combine together to give us the middle value b, which happens to be 11. So let's make a list, and a calculator is definitely comes in handy, right? I want to go with 1 times -210, 2 times 105, -105. 3 times, I don't think 3 is going to work, right? Or does it? 3 times 70, so it does work. -70. 4 times something? So 4 didn't work. How about 5? 5 times something, give us 210. You could go 210 divided by 5. 42. How about 6? 6 times 35. And again, all you got to do on the calculator is go 210 divided by 6. Oh yeah, by the way, this is -210, which means that these will be -42 and a -35. How about 7? -30. 8. 26.20. Okay, so 8 doesn't work. How about 9? So 9 doesn't work. How about 10? 10 times 21? Negative 21?
Don't work.
That one works, okay. And how about, well, see, at this point, I'm looking at these, and if I did add the 10 and the negative 21, when I combine those, that gives me a negative 11, and we want it to be a positive 11, right? That's our B value.
And it's negative 10 plus 21.
So yeah, change the sign. We have the right numbers, just the wrong signs. So that's a negative 10 and a positive 21. And we could actually jump into our factored form answer format. The factored form answer format is AX. In this case, it's AD, which in this case is 6 for A. So 6D and 6D. And you plug in the pair of numbers from step 2, which is a negative 10 and the positive 21. And then for my final step, I reduce or divide each of these binomials by whatever I can. The first binomial I could reduce by 2, leaving me a 3D minus 5. And the second binomial I could reduce not by 2, but I could reduce by what?
3.
By 3.
There's 3D plus 7.
So that's going to be actually 6 divided by 3 is 2D, and then 21 divided by 3 is 7. And that's our factored form, but keep in mind that all that's done is change this quadratic trinomial right here. We changed it to this.
This was 24.
So- So yes, so we still have equals 0, so we still have equals 0. So we still need to split it and solve. So my first binomial, 3D minus 5 equals 0. My second binomial, 2D plus 7 equals 0. And if you solve both of those, plus 5, that'll leave us 3D equaling 5. And then finally, divide by 3. So D equals 5/3. The other one, subtract 7, you're going to have 2D equaling negative 7. And then you're going to divide by 2, giving you D equaling negative 7/2. So if you were taking this on quizzes, you would type in D equals 5/3, comma, D equals negative 7/2 with no spaces between your terms. And that would be it. Man, I'm tired. I want to end this now. Yeah? Okay.